If you've got a trip to Europe coming up, there are some big mistakes that could cost you money, stress you out, and even ruin your trip. But they're all avoidable if you know what to expect. I spent the last 10 years traveling extensively throughout Europe, and a lot has changed since my first trip over a decade ago. My family and I actually just got back from a month exploring Europe's Iberian Peninsula, and so while it's fresh, I want to share some of the biggest travel changes we witnessed, expose some so-called travel hacks that don't work anymore, and help you avoid unfortunate mistakes catching travelers off guard. Starting with your luggage. This is probably the biggest change I've noticed. Airlines, especially budget carriers like Ryanair, EasyJet, etc., are being ruthless about baggage enforcement. We took multiple Ryanair flights during our trip, and every single time, bags went in sizers and on scales, no exceptions. And it's not just European budget airlines anymore. Domestic US carriers are tightening enforcement too. I'm seeing more and more people getting caught off guard at the gate and having to pay to check their bags. So don't make the mistake of getting caught off guard. I don't see this enforcement going away anytime soon, and if anything, it's just gonna get more strict. So here's what you need to do. Check your airline's exact requirements before you pack, not at the airport. And if you're ever unsure about whether your bag will fit or not, we actually created a free tool to help you with this. It has data for over 160 airlines, and it will instantly tell you if your bag fits or not. You can find it at willmybagfit.com, and we'll put links in the description below as well. Okay, I need to be really honest about something here, and it's something we've actually covered in our own videos in the past that I think just doesn't quite hold up anymore. It's content about attire and this unspoken dress code throughout Europe. There's a ton of creators on YouTube talking about what to wear in Europe. And if you start searching today, you're gonna see a lot of info and possibly some conflicting info. I think as a US citizen, there's this general perception that Europeans as a whole are more stylish, more fashionable, etc., than us, which generally I would agree is pretty true. I think we, by contrast, dress kind of sloppily. And so when preparing for a trip and thinking about what you'll pack and thus what you'll wear, a lot of travelers think, how can I blend in? Which is a bit of a fallacy because you won't. Nobody thinks you're local. The moment you pull out your phone to translate a menu, or when you ask for directions in English, or when you talk loudly like we Americans tend to do, everybody knows. And so advice like, don't wear athleisure, or nobody wears baseball caps is A, dated, it's just not true anymore, and B, doesn't really matter anyways. Now don't hear me wrong. I think we should still be conscientious. There's gonna be modesty requirements in some sites, like churches are a great example, that you shouldn't refuse or ignore. And yeah, I think it's another thing to research what to wear to the symphony in Vienna. That's great. But sweeping generalizations about what to wear or not wear in Europe, I think just aren't very helpful because Europe's a huge, diverse place and it's rooted in fallacy. The mistake here, honestly, is thinking you're gonna blend in and then stressing out about that. I love Rick Steves' quote about this. To fit in and be culturally sensitive, I watch my manners, not the cut of my clothes. If you're planning to book an Airbnb on your next Europe trip, here's something you need to know. Short-term rentals are facing a major regulatory crackdown, and it's happening fast. Just last month, Spain ordered Airbnb to remove over 65,000 listings. Athens has already capped short-term rentals in its historic center starting January 2025. Budapest is rolling out district-wide bans in 2026, and a new EU-wide rule from earlier this year is forcing platforms to share data with cities who are using it to tighten the screws. We actually experienced this firsthand in Valencia. We booked what looked like a normal Airbnb, but the owner required an 11-night minimum, labeled it business travel only, and made us sign a lease outside the platform, even though we paid through Airbnb. Now, this was happening before the major legislation kind of finalized, but I think you'll see more properties requiring longer stays, possibly business justifications, changing platforms entirely, or just looking for other workarounds. I don't think short-term rentals are going to go away entirely, but I do think supply is going to shrink and travelers will have to jump through more hoops depending on the city. So don't get caught off guard and just be mindful you could have some other options. For years, if someone asked me, what's one of your go-to travel hacks? One of the first things I would pull out of my quiver was travel during the shoulder season. That sweet spot in April or September where the crowds were smaller, the prices were lower, and the weather was still pretty good. It used to be such a reliable trick. But lately, even that is starting to change. On this last trip, we were in Portugal and Spain in late April, and parts of it were packed. Not peak summer packed, but nowhere near as quiet or affordable as shoulder season used to be. My theory is the shoulder is getting wider. As more and more travelers are trying to avoid the peak summer surge, those in-between months are starting to feel kind of crowded too. I wouldn't say shoulder season is dead, it's just not the unbeatable hack it used to be, and you just have to time it a little smarter now. On that note, don't ignore the second or third cities of a country. I'm talking about the places that aren't the big tourist hotspot, but still have everything you need for a great trip, great food, public transit, walkability, local culture, just without as much of the touristy chaos. We did this in Valencia and we absolutely loved it. Personally, I am really getting into looking for the mid-sized cities that have about 1 million people or less. Big enough to have city amenities, but not so big that you're drowning in tourists. And I think Valencia hit that sweet spot perfectly. So does Ghent. It's a little bit smaller, but everyone is going to Brussels or Bruges, and we based ourselves in Ghent with zero regrets, super low crowds. The contrast was stark on our recent trip. We had this amazing time in Valencia, and then we visited Porto and Lisbon at the tail end of our trip in late April. And both of those cities were absolutely slammed, just super packed, and it wasn't even May yet. It really drove home how much of a difference choosing the right city makes. And I've said it 1,000 times, don't not go to the super touristy place. Don't not ever visit the Eiffel Tower, for example, but just know what you're getting into. And we always try to balance visiting the crowded touristy hotspot kind of places with somewhere where we can experience a lot of the quality of life without nearly as much of the hustle and bustle, which becomes a more kind of relaxing, enjoyable trip that way. Another big mistake, and take it from me, is not taking a little time to brush up on the local language before your trip. I always have just a few of the key survival phrases in a language of any place I'm visiting. Please, thank you, excuse me, toilet, beer. But there were several moments in Spain and Portugal where I thought, man, I wish I knew how to say what I'm trying to say without fumbling around for Google Translate. And that is why I recommend Rosetta Stone. Their lessons are built around real-world conversations, not just games or random vocab lists like a lot of apps today are using. And they even give you helpful phrase books for everyday travel situations like ordering food, checking into your hotel, or asking for directions. No matter how you learn best, they've got you covered. If you're visual, they have image-based lessons. If you prefer audio, there's listening and pronunciation drills. I'm more of a speaking and listening kind of person, so I really like the True Accent tool. I can hear how something should sound, repeat it myself, and then get instant feedback. I like that the lessons are short, flexible, and available on both app and desktop. If you click the link in the description or scan the QR code on screen, you'll get 60% off a lifetime subscription to Rosetta Stone and get access to all 25 languages they offer forever. Big thanks to our friends at Rosetta Stone for sponsoring today's video. Don't forget to carry some cash and backup credit cards. While much of the world is going cashless, you're still gonna inevitably walk into a place that's cash only. I was really glad a few times that we had cash on hand, like during Spain and Portugal's power outages, where even the places that normally took card could only accept cash. You will never regret having a little bit of cash. You also want to make sure that you have multiple card options. Our good friend joined us on this trip and only brought an Amex, which created a few hiccups since some restaurants and shops didn't accept it. It wasn't a huge deal. We'd just cover it and then settle up later, but it was a good reminder to bring more than one form of payment. And on that note, here's my group travel tip. Don't split the check at restaurants. Have one person pay and then just Venmo or Cash App or PayPal each other afterwards. It's faster, easier, and because splitting is really not that common, it's gonna make your server's life easier too. Hey, if you've gotten value out of this video so far, please hit that like button so that YouTube will know to suggest it to other travelers like you. Thanks. Okay, this one's on us. We were at Madrid's Chamartín train station, which is currently under construction. We'd arrived with plenty of time. I think we had about an hour to kill, so we grabbed some breakfast and we figured we would just relax for a bit. We didn't actually check where our platform was until it was getting closer to time, and it turns out it was almost a quarter-mile walk through a maze of signage, escalators, nowhere near where we'd been sitting. Frantically running there, by the time we got to the platform, the doors were closed, and even though we could see our train, they wouldn't let us down to get on. So, before you get comfy, find your platform, especially if the station's pretty big. Even as someone who's normally very buttoned up with this kind of thing and, makes videos like this for a living, we just let our guard down and it ended up costing us an hour. Rebooking flights before you board can save your whole itinerary. If you see that due to a flight delay, you're gonna miss a connecting flight, you can rebook your entire itinerary before even stepping foot on that delayed flight. Let me explain. When we were leaving for this trip, it was early April, and the East Coast here in the USA was getting hammered with bad weather. Our original connection was through Charlotte, and there was a delay leaving our home airport. Because of that delay, it was almost a guarantee we were gonna miss our connection, and in turn, our big flight from Charlotte to Madrid. Now, here's the move that I had never tried before, but pulled it off pretty easily. I just went up to the gate agent of our delayed flight before we boarded, and I explained that, hey, it looks like we're gonna miss our connection here. Like, I've got a minute based on American Airlines estimates right now to make it onto that other plane. It's not gonna happen. They were able to reissue our entire itinerary right then and there. So instead of going through Charlotte, they rerouted us from our home airport to Philly, and then from Philly to Madrid. We didn't have to exit the airport. We didn't have to go back outside of security. We got to stay right there, checked in. We waited a couple more hours, but we were rebooked on an entirely different route, all from our home airport. The key was catching it early and going and asking. Look, go ask, because the worst someone was gonna say is no. If we'd boarded that first flight, we would have been stuck dealing with the fallout after the fact, stuck in Charlotte, rebooked the next day, maybe even losing a hotel night on the other side. So the big takeaway is, if there's a delay at your origin airport that's gonna cause a domino effect of misconnections, go talk to somebody before you board, because you have way more options before wheels up. Don't assume kids aren't welcome. I think a lot of us, especially Americans, go in expecting that people will be annoyed you're traveling with a kid, but that really hasn't been our experience. We've taken our daughter to, I think, 8 countries throughout Europe now, and I honestly have found most of those places to be just as, if not way more, family friendly than the USA. And I don't mean because there's public playgrounds everywhere, or because there's kid zones on trains. Those things are nice, but that's more child focused than family focused. I mean how kids are an expected part of everyday life. How walking into a restaurant or a wine bar, nobody scoffs or seems annoyed that we have our daughter with us. How people will go out of their way to try and make our little girl laugh or give her a little dessert on the house. About half of this most recent trip, we were in Portugal, and dude, they love kids. And we as a family consistently felt prioritized. For example, we were visiting Sintra, and there was this total mob waiting to get on a bus. The driver saw us, parked his bus, got out of his seat, walked to the back door, and then said, "You board first." We got on, he shut the door behind us, and he said, "Families are a priority here." Another time, we had a gate agent pull us out of the crowd to pre-board. Look, traveling with kids can be challenging. I'm not diminishing that. Getting a toddler asleep on a plane is 10 out of 10, highly recommend. But if you have to pick between changing diapers and wiping noses at home or in Italy, I'm picking Italy every day of the week. And the investment in making these memories, at least for us, already paying off. Now, there's another pretty important topic to cover, and it's the amount of dated travel safety advice floating around out there. I actually just made a whole video about this, and if you want to know what's worth paying attention to and what you should honestly just ignore, check out this video. Thanks so much for watching. Happy travels.